Today is June 4th, 2024, and you're listening to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable, kinda.
Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard, seen from again. Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard, seen from again.
Hello. Welcome to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. I'm your co-host, Chris Quinn. I'm joined by your other co-host, Mike Shallau of Is Was Brewing. How are you, Mike? Good day today for you?
Great day for me, Chris.
Okay, good. Good to hear that.
Yeah, great day.
Good. Cheers are in order. And thanks, as always, to the Fade Master, Serge, for fading us in and out. Another flawless fade.
Flawless as always.
On this terribly rainy June evening. Man, it's pouring.
It's going to have been on and off.
Yeah.
I think the music's still on.
The
in
music's
this room.
still on. I turned it off. Somebody turned it back
maybe
on,
just,
I think.
Maybe it's just loud from the other room.
Yeah, maybe it's just loud in the other room.
Anyway, this is how.
Oh, no, somebody turned it back on. That's okay. It's off now.
No, there's only one person, so.
Yes. So, thanks to Serge. Thanks to the fearless leaders at Lumpen Radio for having us yet again. And everyone who's listening over the airways, 105.5 WLPN in Chicago. And thanks to everyone who's listening via podcast. I've been just started to look today. Apparently, people have been leaving a few comments in Spotify as well. So thanks to people who are listening via Spotify. Probably give them a little bit more love. And everyone else who's listening. I think with that we should probably just get right into it. We have how do we even introduce this gentleman who's with us? It's been a while. But this is kind of a retro show.
It is a retro
so we needed to have a retro guest.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think he got dropped off in like the new Uber hovercraft.
Yes.
The option you can have.
Yes.
Ubercraft.
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 Yeah.
It was very sparkly.
Yeah.
But it was also being towed.
It was also, yes, it was being towed.
They just started Ubercraft like 6 months ago. Of course, I was the first one to sign up because my hovercraft's always at the jewelers.
Yours is?
So he gave it to you. What, did he will it to you when he left the country?
Yeah, it's always the jewelers now.
Oh, he's on the run.
It's
right
never. It's almost like, here, take this. It won't work.
Right.
And then I saw you could sign up for Ubercraft, so I'm like,
that's cool.
Ruben's always on the hovercraft. Why can't I just?
Why
take
can't you?
Yeah.
That's cool. Good to see you, Ed. Awesome
Great
to have
see
you here,
man. I'm having this incredible sandwich here. This beef sandwich here at the Beer Temple with like this kind of like horseradishy ranchy sauce with delicious cheese, toasty bun.
Glad you liked it.
I'm like glad I came out for the sandwich.
Chris is sliding him $20 across the table.
Right?
Thanks so much.
I'm glad you liked it. Yeah, it's our new
so
off when the kitchen is closed menu item.
Should keep it on the menu all the time.
Yeah. Well,
what are the other?
It's late night every night. So it's late night every night, and then all day Monday, Tuesday.
What cafeteria pizza?
Mm-hmm.
The
pretzels,
cheesy beefy boy. Pretzels.
The bar mix.
Nice.
And you can like some spreads as well.
Cool.
So, yeah.
And then for those of you who don't know me,
yeah, who are you?
My name's Ed, or Edmar, from Mars Community Brewing Company.
Yeah.
It's been a while. It's been half a year since I've been here, and I feel like you guys now just expect I'm always gaming upstairs, and you don't want to bother me.
Yeah, no.
I've come down here after your shows and seen other guests here having a great time, and I'm wondering, like, what did I do? Is my phone on silent?
Yeah.
You were gaming a little too hard. We were
Why aren't you
calling
using the broom handle? Is the broom gone?
Yeah, someone took the broom. They started sweeping with it.
Someone started
they're
with
sweeping.
The broom.
They're not. The broom's no longer to tap the ceiling.
No.
Where my man cave is.
The health department came and said we're not allowed to tap the ceiling with the broom anymore.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm sorry, but
What have you been playing recently?
Oh well, pretty big change in my life, really.
Oh wow.
As you know, I've been playing Battlefield, whatever.
I mean,
for most
as long
of the time
as
I've known you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Ghost of Tsushima came out with a PC version.
Okay.
With the expansion of Iki Island. In Ghost of Tsushima, you can take the persona of a samurai. The island of Tsushima was just invaded by the Mongols. And it's your goal to rescue your uncle, who was captured, and to liberate the island from the Mongol horde.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
That
I like the historic element to it.
And it also made me think about other samurai kind of Shogun era video games.
Is that why you started playing it, because of the show Shogun?
That was part of it.
Okay.
Also going to Japan recently.
Oh, that's right. That's true. That
And,
would probably do it.
And Total War Shogun 2 is quite possibly the best real-time strategy game,
Really?
Wow.
like in the history of RTSs.
Wow.
So not only am I reenacting the pre-war that you see happening in Shogun, I actually can become Shogun.
Oh, good.
You get to be.
Good luck.
You could be that guy.
Good luck.
Yeah, that's where I've been lately.
Yeah, unite the clans.
Exactly. Bring all the clans together, much like the guest that we're going to be talking about.
Yes.
From 9 or 10 years ago.
So
Who was a great Shogun himself of craft beer.
So that's why that's why
transition.
the
Nice.
three of us are here, is because I alluded to it last week that I was going to talk about a little bit about the Lagunitas situation with the brewery closing, and we were going to talk about the episode when Tony Magee was on, episode number 7, August
Nice.
17th.
7.
It was published August 17th, 2015. So
Wow.
if you listen to the show, I'll say what day it is. I forgot to actually write that part down. But probably close to a few days before that,
I
probably.
listened to it this morning, but I did not write it down either.
So it's between August 10th and August 16th. Yeah, it's probably the most talked about episode, I would say, or one of them that we've had. Now it's 9 years later that the show's been on, and
What happened?
I don't know. I don't know.
Where are
But as
we?
I started listening to the episode that Tony was on, I texted, I think, both of you and said, this actually needs its own show, because it was pretty amazing. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about this past episode that we did, and you guys can all listen in. It's episode number 7. It's called I Come From the Future, and we'll get into why it's called that in a little bit. And I have some clips, but I figured we could just kind of set the scene a little bit first. It was the 7th episode. We were in Bridgeport at the CoPro. Studio B hadn't even been... wasn't
built
even
yet.
a concept yet. It certainly hadn't been built.
Yeah.
But maybe it was a
it
concept.
was a concept. It talked about how it was going to get built on
Okay.
the episode.
Okay.
It was a concept.
Okay.
But there were definitely those great sculptural speakers that were outside
Yes.
the Infinity Room
Yes.
studio zone.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was an interesting time when we're just trying to.
You weren't even on the air yet.
No, we were basically streaming 24/7.
Yeah.
Logan Bay actually set up
Yep.
24-hour stream.
Yeah,
which
pre-surge.
Yeah,
Pre-surge.
which led to, gosh, a couple
Surge
months
wasn't even born
after
yet.
that. A couple months after that, we must have already had the anniversary or the big fundraiser for the radio station. We actually made a 12-pack of Lumpen Radio Bogey
I remember
beer.
that.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yes, I do remember
And
that.
sold it for $40 a 12-pack.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And all that money raised about $20K to help build Lumpen Radio.
That's
those
amazing.
Those
12 packs.
They were cool.
The coolest 12 packs
Yeah.
of all time.
They were
really
awesome.
beautiful. They look like a boombox. It actually came with a digital album of 80s cover jams by artists from around the country and around the world. But yeah, that was like an interesting time because the radio station was about to be built. We were going to get on the air. I think that's when we actually moved in. We were in our little space on Halstead as my own history as a brewery. I think at that time too, Pipeworks may have purchased the location or moved into the location by the original Off Color.
Yeah, so we'll set it up. So the people on the show were myself. I was the only host then, but you, Mike Shallau, were already third-time guest.
So kind of co-host.
And you were also kind of co-host. So it was the three of us,
me,
you, Mike, and Edmar, and then Tony Magee, the owner at the time and founder of Lagunitas, which was probably the hottest craft property in the world at the time. Probably not even close, I would say. We had him on. Pretty big get for episode 7. Never have been quite able to match that one, but whatever.
I was on a lot more episodes after that.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, so was Ed.
It's true. All right, never mind.
I live there.
But
if you want to talk about like star power for your show, guys, you know when Ruben Kincaid comes on, it gets really wacky.
It's true.
Or King Kona.
Right.
Yeah.
Or, man, shoot. I think that guy's, I can only imagine.
Yeah,
he's on the
He's
lamb
probably
right
retired
now,
to an island.
I think he's doing drip coin right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That guy definitely got in the
Fashion and Bitcoin combined.
Drip coin.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's like wherever.
He's a very fashionable gentleman.
Always wearing the hottest
in
Hanbok outfits that are available on the
formal,
on the scene.
historical Korean wear.
Formal wear. Mm-hmm.
Formal wear. Yeah. So it was us, and it was mid-August, 2015. We have some clips that we'll listen to and just talk about this episode because we allude to this episode quite a bit, but I had not ever listened to this episode in full, really, until yesterday. But I started listening to it last week, and I was like, "Ooh, I gotta save this." But Mars was about to announce their new space, but they said it was close. They weren't going to say where.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was the timeline.
Crazy.
And then
just
Mike,
about to buy the building.
You were at Pipeworks, and your canning line had just recently gotten up. You're in your new space, and you were promoting Warbird, which was the first beer to come out that was a recipe that was made for the new system.
Yeah, it was intended to be cans.
Right.
Because I listened to the episode this morning, and we had printing issues with Lizard King, which was intended to be in cans, but we wanted to release first, but we didn't get the cans.
Because there was issues with getting 16-ounce cans at the time.
There was only one facility in the country. There were two. I think they're back down to one, maybe.
Okay, so went up to 2 and then back down to 1.
Yeah.
That might be a theme, that things have changed and then kind
come
of
all the way around.
Yeah, so we'll see. I think the theme is, as we're talking, we'll play the clips and we'll just listen to it. It's very Tony Magee centric, but all of us are definitely in there. And then we'll just talk about, I think, that looking back at that episode and what this guy had to say and where our minds were and where the market was at the time. And it's bananas.
And should preface for people who haven't listened to all the previous episodes that we're doing this because Lagunitas is closing their Chicago facility.
Yes.
Which they had just opened when we recorded. Did we say this already?
We alluded to it. Yeah.
Well, so they're by come August there will be no production or tap room anymore in Chicago.
Right. They had I think they had announced it, but they had not yet built it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think they were saying it was going to come online in the next year or two, I think. So should we just get into it? I've got the first one and it is sequential. I don't have them like really based on theme. I have them just the order that they came in on the show. So, Serge, why don't you play clip 1 for us, if you could, please?
5 years from now, will be even different than it is now. But
there's Tony.
Think about like you can go to Dominic's or something, wherever you go, and you can find cigars. But you can go to a cigar shop to find the real special ones. The rare ones. It's the same kind of thing. And the ones at the grocery stores probably sell 10 times what the little specialty guys sell. But that's the nature of the two different businesses. And so it creates all sorts of cool niches. I mean, craft beer is remaking the whole of the landscape of beer in the United States, and it's already beginning all around the world.
So that was just a setup of kind of what the conversation was about. And we were talking about the idea of having a niche retail presence, really, and how actually it expanding from niche. So it was like craft beers in Dominic's. And he's like, yeah, well, you can get cigars in Dominic's now. Whatever. The big sign that says there's an event in progress means you just don't come in. And never.
You can't get craft beer in Dominic's now.
Yeah,
that's changed.
That's true. Dominic's is gone. Dominic's does not exist anymore. But yeah, just an interesting time, and I think it was just interesting for me to listen and remember when, craft beer was just starting to get into grocery stores. People, like, grocery stores weren't even really carrying it then. It's hard to
believe 9 years down the road. But it was true. I mean, they might have had Sierra Nevada. They might have had Boston Beer Company.
Yeah.
But like even like Half Acre wasn't really penetrating grocery stores quite that much then, and like it wasn't even there. Like I remember explicitly it being like a thing that they weren't trying to do.
Yeah.
And I think on that episode I talk about how we were actively not taking on larger chains because we couldn't service them.
Right.
And
you being
Pipeworks
because you're now with you and our is was.
I now our is was. And that certainly has changed too. Even breweries the size of what Pipeworks is now and what it was going to grow into and what we planned to grow into, or what Pipeworks planned to grow into when I was saying that, all of those breweries need to sell beer at grocery stores.
Right.
If you're like it's tough to be a brewery that's 10,000 barrels plus and not at least selling a beer at some of the grocery stores.
Right. So going right into the next clip, we'll have the next one going in just a moment. He talks about some of the growth that Lagunitas has because they were around since 1993.
Yeah.
So remember, this is 2015, so they were already 12 years old. So they're pretty old at the time. But just
older than 20.
Oh, sorry, they're 23 years old. Sorry,
my bad. Hold on, math.
Yeah, right. But it's just interesting now that you'll think about, okay, 9 years. He talks about where he was essentially 9 years prior to that, and it's interesting. So we'll play the next clip.
So the thing about craft is like, people see all of us three of us sitting here as all when we're on the store shelf, we're all just peers. They see craft as a set piece,
right?
With really small breweries, with mid-sized local breweries, with regional breweries and national breweries. And the truth is, each of us is a point on a curve, because and it takes a lot of calculus to calculate the exact location of a point on a curve.
Sure.
And so you will not be the same business next month that you were this month, and certainly 5 years from now you'll be unrecognizable to yourself. Right. I mean, like 8 years ago, I was 35,000 barrels.
Wow.
I mean, so everything. So to see Lagunitas as one particular thing, it kind of misses the story.
And you were at what, 500,000 last year or something like that?
Last year it was 650 or something.
Wow.
This year will be 830. I mean, it's
Yeah.
But the thing is that consumers though see us, beer lovers see us all as the same thing. But the truth is, everything's a point on a curve at a different life phase.
Yeah. Now, do you think that there's like a slippery slope craft is defined by the Brewers Association as, a certain parameter, certain set of things. Right.
Knuckleheads.
Right, but the
Put a pin
curve
in
really
that
is
one.
just beer in general, right? It's not
That's the
craft
thing.
beer and non-craft beer.
It's all on a
and
spectrum of something.
Right.
Yeah. Craft in the future, craft will be
Just
what
beer.
like the Mexican beers are today. I mean, in terms of market presence and acceptance. And the Mexican beers will likely be where Bud Miller and Coors sit.
So,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
so we have we dropped the lead, by the way. This
Yeah.
was recorded about 2 weeks before he announced he was selling 50% to Heineken. That is very, very crucial.
Right.
Yeah.
So he was still independently owned. He was at 650 last year, going to 800. So there's a lot to kind of parse just from that little 90-second clip.
A lot.
And in his perspective, obviously, he knew this was happening. Right. He knew what his growth was. He understood the future. This was a song he was singing to Heineken and everyone else, for sure. But it's beautiful to see him predict that craft would be like a Mexican beer, right?
Right.
And that it would be like as much
accepted,
of a segment,
yeah,
as accepted. Yeah, it's really fascinating. I mean,
and then the Mexican lagers would be where Bud Miller Coors is because
that's
that
the real
just
one.
happened. Nobody that I knew of was talking about that.
Mexican lagers
Nobody.
overtaking Bud Miller,
No.
Coors,
Who would have
everything.
thought?
Domestics.
Who would have thought?
No one. Nobody.
Yeah,
Except
Not
for Tony.
one person except Tony.
right. And we have these, this yearly episode where we look into the future and stuff like that. But this is some serious soothsaying when you're saying stuff like that.
Yeah.
And listening back, I was kind of in awe of some of the stuff that he was aware of, and also it was very interesting. And I want to hit on this early. This was right before he sold to Heineken.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to all of this in that context of where he saw things going and why he felt he should sell 50%, I should say. He sold 50%
And then they
to
sold
Heineken.
another 50.
2 years
so
later,
it's just a
they did.
slow walk.
2 years later.
Probably
yeah.
the deal.
It's just a slow walk to
Yeah.
because there were a lot of optics at that point that were like, oh, you sold out, but they
Right.
were able to be like, no, we sold 50% so we could grow and do this and
Right.
that, and then they sold the other 50%.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah. I think
Probably, we don't know.
they're like, sir, would you like another $500 million?
We have
Like,
no clue.
Yeah, I would.
Right. So, but yes, but we don't know that for sure.
Right.
Okay.
That's
So,
first time on this show there was a hot take.
yeah. But I just want to put that out there. Like, we don't. Yeah.
He didn't
So-
come up to us after the show and be like, actually, guys.
But here's one thing that he didn't say anything
No,
to us
no,
on the
no.
show, and we'll get into that a little bit more later as well. But one thing I do think he was dead on about was right at the beginning, where he said, Mars was. I mean, you were doing 750s only. No, 500
500
mil
mils.
single serve
bottles.
bottles at the time.
Yeah.
Pipeworks had just gone through a major expansion to go from all
Bombers.
bombers into cans.
Yeah.
And you were looking to be a serious local player with maybe someday being regional, who knows, something like that. And then you had Lagunitas, which was this absolute rocket ship. And he was saying that people see us on the shelves, they think of all as the same. And I remember, I don't know what I thought at the time, but I could imagine myself being like, no, people don't see you all as the same. But he was right.
He was right.
He is right.
It's kind of incredible that he could be so humble to even say that when he's making almost 250,000 barrels. I'm sorry, 750,000 of barrels that year, right? That his beer is treated like the Mars beer on the little 500 mil.
And he, I think, could use that to his advantage too. Is how I was. Thinking
that's
of
what the way that I read that, listen to it now, were things in that moment when he was like one of the biggest independent craft brewers. I was like, it's so cool that he thinks of us as peers. And now I listen back to it and be like, more through like that cultural capital lens that you've talked about, right? Where like Lagunitas, like he's about to sell part of what he was saying he connects with us on as value to a multinational corporation, right? And he's astutely aware that his connection to smaller breweries and the perception of them as being something more akin to us has added value to that brand, and that it's important. and that it is a valuable differentiation point that a company like Heineken
could never do.
Has now knows, like Budweiser will find out, could never, and probably found out why they were buying breweries at the time, could never create on their own.
That's a really good point. Everyone bought all these breweries. It was like a gold rush going on, right? Of breweries trying to
right.
And this was before a lot of that happened too, right?
Yeah,
it was in the midst of it. It was starting to happen.
In the midst, but it really hadn't taken off yet.
Yeah,
it really hadn't taken off.
Yeah.
But Mike, you bring up something that maybe we don't think about, or I don't think about. I've never worked in a corporation that's very large. I've never been in consumer packaged goods. I don't understand the industry at all. Never did. Probably still don't. They knew they could never build something like Lagunitas or any of the breweries that they purchased.
Right, because they had tried, right? That's what Shock Top was supposed to be.
There was that
Blue
entire
Moon kind of work.
What was that whole Miller line of
American Ale or whatever they were doing.
So many crazy, lame.
Yeah,
fake
and he gets
crap
into
breweries.
that. Tony gets into that in a little bit. We'll talk about it, but yeah, absolutely. And also, perhaps Tony realized that the big guys were going to be part of craft, and the consumer wasn't going to be able to tell the difference because it was going to be at one point an independent, air quotes, authentic brand, right? They weren't going to create Shock Top. They were going to buy a Lagunitas or a Ballast Point or whoever it is, and it's going to be completely, or a Goose Island.
It'll be differentiated in the eyes of the consumer.
So in the eyes of the consumer, it's the same. Like, wait, they were independent, they aren't now. Wait, what? 50%? Wait. And
they don't
he
care.
probably thought, well, someone's got to do it, and I'm going to be in a position to have my company be the one. Obviously, you could be probably the most cynical about it and be like, and I'm going to be the one to make the $1 billion. And you can also, because he does sound throughout this episode, you were alluding to this earlier, Mike, somewhat to extremely, somewhere in between that, genuine, right?
Sure.
And so with that in mind, maybe he thought, and I will be as good a steward as anyone to kind of lead that charge.
Very
right?
fair, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe at the
come
time
on,
that's what
guys,
he thought.
It's 23 years he's been owning a brewery.
Totally.
He's gone through so many different life cycles of any business, and he grew this category for the rest of us, right? Or helped grow it. I think that sincerity was there. I think he was not telling us the beautiful secret that he revealed 2 weeks later, but I think you're right. In his mind, it's like, well, I'm going to be the guy who's going to lead this charge. I'm going to do it first. Maybe he knows all the other guys who are being offered these deals. We have no idea. And he's like, well, no, man, I'm lining this up before you guys have a chance, right?
Are there any clips about the set captain conversation?
Yeah. We'll talk about that
save
too.
that for that then.
All the stuff is definitely in there. There's nothing that really no topics that get dropped. But one last thing I want to say about that last clip was, he said 8 years ago, and this was recorded almost exactly 9 years ago.
Yeah, so 17 years ago.
So he went from 35,000 to he was going to do 800,000 that year. So think about that. I mean, how many breweries in the past 8 years
no one
have gone who have already started? Let's say they were already at, I'll give a low number, 4,000 barrels or higher. He was at 35. Who has had the same exponential growth? It's like over 20x in 8 years. Who's already at 4 has done 20x.
There's maybe a couple, maybe like Rheingeist or something like that.
Maybe, yeah.
Athletic.
I'm not going to count them.
Yeah. I don't think there are many examples, Chris.
There's also like orders of magnitude different. Even if we're going to just say the percentage or the X growth between going from 4 to 100 or 120, going from 35 to 6, 800.
Yeah,
but that was a time where like people were like, well, maybe one day we'll get there. Like not the 800, but like the idea of like I don't remember what was in 26-year-old Mike's head, but I don't think it was that we're going to be a 100,000 barrel a year brewery at Pipeworks, but it was like, well, it's not out of the question. It's possible.
Sure.
Was part of like the.
And this was
for everyone that was like running a brewery then.
Yeah,
it was
early
like
stages of the arms race.
Yeah.
The arms race was just getting fired up, and I remember the feeling being watching this insane growth that Lagunitas was going through, and just being awed by it.
And the thing is, they weren't the only one though.
But they were the one. They were the one.
They were definitely the one. But Ballast Point was doing something pretty similar.
Yeah.
And at similar like numbers, like
maybe
they were hundreds of thousands of barrels.
Yeah. I mean,
which
I
is
think
very different than tens of thousands.
Lagunitas
of barrels
was like the
now.
number 1 or 2 IPA in the country.
Yeah.
And they were friggin' massive.
But an interesting point, like at the beginning of this episode, when you talk about the beers that we've been drinking recently, you talk about Grunion, Ed. You were drinking Grunion, the Ballast Point Pale Ale, while you were gaming, and you guys talk about how Chris brings up, how do you feel about a $16 6-pack? And you're like, I don't care, I want to drink the good beer. But like Ballast Point growing at $16 a 6-pack. I remember Sculpin, and I remember people like
Sculpin was $16.99, whatever.
Yeah. And people that
no one cared.
People I grew up in Connecticut being like, "Have you had this Sculpin? It's like $18, but it's so good."
Yeah.
Like it was a moment,
yeah.
and like twice the price of Lagunitas. Yeah. So even if they were like half the volume, the revenues were probably similar.
Yeah. At that time, I think you could price things there, and no one cared. Right? There was like a.
I mean, we've blown past that now for certain beers, right?
Yeah.
But those are grocery store beers.
Yeah.
There's no $16 6-pack of grocery store beer anymore.
It's probably not a Mars beer. We don't make 6-packs.
Yeah.
So
it's a $16 4-pack.
Let's play the next one. This is a longer clip, so we can kind of talk over it. And if anyone wants to comment on what was just said, just say, okay, let's hold it there for a moment, because this is going to span. It's one uninterrupted clip that just spans a whole bunch of really interesting stuff. So whenever you're ready, why don't we play clip 3?
So the Brewers Association, they came out with their report. They came out with quarterly
slightly
reports.
Edited right then.
And everybody I know, like, kind of at least pays a little bit of attention to it. And it's funny. It's one of those things where the numbers, like, it's always so positive that you almost like gloss over it. But it is amazing that the growth is just so sustained, and that was just the general word was just incredible growth. So
a little conception, So I come from California.
All right, pause
Portland,
it here for a second. Yeah, so just funny a little bit to think back now with just quarter after quarter, year after year of doom and gloom from the BA. And how we were talking about, it's so boring. They're just talking about incredible growth, explosive growth over and over.
Next,
it's always so positive. Yeah.
So, of course, it's massive growth.
Right. So that was just kind of the preface for what was going to be said. So here, continue on.
It's like I come from the future. I mean,
can you rewind it a tiny bit?
All across.
Incredible growth. So
a little conception, So I come from California, Portland, Seattle, important places for us. It's like I come from the future. I mean, around the country, all across the United States, 50 states, craft is 9% of all the beer sold. In California, Seattle, and Portland, 50.
Yeah. Is it California too?
50? It's San Francisco, I should say, anyway.
Right.
I mean, for certain. So it's like 50%. You can't even imagine. And growing at like
by
15
dollar,
20%.
right? 50 by dollar, right?
50 share of dollars. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's maybe it's like 40-some, mid-40 on volume, but it doesn't matter. It's like that's an extraordinary thing. And around the country, it's 9%. So
that means that means it's zero somewhere.
Well, in Alabama,
right?
in parts of Arkansas.
So why are you opening up a brewery in Arkansas or Alabama? Or wait, hold on,
I think you're preempting the announcement.
Yeah, right.
Here, okay?
Son of a.
No, somebody else is doing that. That's great.
Yeah.
I'm glad they're doing it.
But I like the notion that you're from the future, Tony, and I think by coming here from the future, when you
it's
open
a little
up your
NSFW right
second
now.
brewery here, you really encouraged and enabled a lot of people to open up their own breweries. You're proof in the pudding there. It's like, look, Lagunitas is coming to Chicago, opening up this place.
I that's too much to say that. I mean, it's really too much. But what we did, this is the thing that really is
We'll get into the next thing, but
This is where your love affair was born.
Yeah, your love affair of Tony.
I think he touched my hand.
Yeah, you were smitten.
Tony touched me at that point, and I looked into his eyes.
We all promised to not talk about it.
I drank the Lagunitas Kool-Aid.
That was the moment you started it.
Yeah.
I feel it right now. I got chills.
Yeah.
Is he in the room right now?
So, we'll talk a little bit more about like 9% and potential growth and stuff like that. But, yeah, just for context, craft was at 9% of overall beer sales at that time. We can get into where we're at now. Yeah, by dollar. So then Ed credits Lagunitas and Tony Magee. Kind of personally, Tony Magee he gets credit for the growth, Chicago's growth in the craft beer scene.
Can you rewind that? I think I
go back.
I think
go
I
back.
said it was encouraging, and it was helping Chicago breweries. Let me hear this. Let me hear this.
I think you're
Somebody
preempting the
else is.
announcement.
Yeah,
here,
right.
Okay.
Son of a.
No, somebody else is doing that. That's great. I'm glad they're doing
But I like the notion that you're from the future, Tony. And I think by coming here from the future, when you open up your second brewery here, you really encouraged and enabled a lot of people to open up their own breweries. You're proof in the pudding there. It's like, look, Lagunitas is coming to Chicago, opening up this place.
You know, I that's too much to say that.
Hey, I still stand by that. It's true.
Yeah.
I think there is
Yeah,
something to
there's
that.
some truth to that, man.
It's easy to look back on it and be like, "What?
Yeah.
Who cares?" But like that was true. Like, and also in a somewhat fleggling beer scene, right? It was still coming up at that point.
Yeah, how many?
And now it's
how many breweries we have in Chicago in 2015?
I don't know,
20?
Less maybe.
15?
Yeah, 15,
Yeah.
15 to 30, I would guess. And now
Maybe
there's-
Illinois, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now there's 200.
Now it's widely
something.
considered one of the best places to drink beer
In the world.
In the world.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it wasn't that then.
But the thing is, like, people who had their investment portfolio plans ready were able to point to Lagunitas and go, they're going to open up a $500 million or $500,000 barrel facility right here. They expect that much growth. Why don't we just open up our XYZ?
Right.
I'm sure it helped other people get their funding or encourage them to open their own brewery to make enough beer that fit in one of his tanks the entire year.
Right.
Yeah. So we won't take credit for that. Wrongly, I suppose.
Wrongly.
Yeah, I would say.
Once again, he was wrong.
Fairly,
9
but-
years ago, he's wrong. He's wrong now.
Yeah. But here's what he does take credit for. Yeah.
Did do, and this is the thing that really is that was the game changer, is that when Windy City got purchased by Ray's Holdings, and when Ray's
Windy
Holdings
City
then
is the
treated Windy City right and allowed it to grow,
distributor.
it made every other distributor in the city go, "Oh my God, what just happened? The boat is leaving the dock, and we need to get good craft brands in here, and then we need to put them in the market right away, and we need to build this for ourselves as well." That was the big game changer. We didn't change the beer culture. The beer culture here was alive and well, and people were making beer, and it was
Now,
all
you've
good.
talked a lot
But changing distributors' minds, that changed everything.
I don't think people really realize how important that is, actually. Reyes Group actually was benevolent in terms of treating their portfolio in this business.
I made sure of it.
Yeah,
I mean, that was,
and they understood what was happening. That they were able to.
And for the people out there, Reyes is a big interstate
they're the
beer wholesaler.
biggest Miller Coors wholesaler in the country.
Yeah.
And they just bought Coca-Cola bottling and packaging in the city, and it's owned by two brothers who started it in 1978 from zero.
Yeah,
I mean,
still, is it a private company?
it's a private company.
Yeah, private company.
Yeah, two brothers. So
But explain why that's super.
Yeah.
So you laughed. You pointed at me and laughed.
Yeah, Reyes, benevolent Reyes.
Benevolent distributor,
Reyes.
Reyes.
Yeah, they are benevolent.
I think we should put that on a T-shirt and have everyone throw darts at me.
The benevolent, it should be like, one hand up like a saint, like a sainted man.
Well, Ed's always been a very big multi-state
Big
conglomerate.
biz,
Yeah.
multi-state operator, big distro.
Yeah. It's
I'm
always
one of
been your MO.
I'm one of their sycophants. Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely speak
Suckling
really
the
highly
teeth,
of them.
yeah.
Yeah. But listen, we get into a little bit more about the distributors in just a moment. Yeah.
Important for beer, for breweries, for craft breweries, and specifically.
the way I see it is like Chicago was the last bastion of like death grip struggle for Bud Miller, Coors, and then Heilemann. Before it became part of other things.
Yeah.
And it was like one of those markets where they held their distributors down like with their foot on their throats, you know. And some of these distributors brought in craft, but they weren't enthusiastic about it. They brought it in just because they needed to have some of it to sell to some of their accounts, and there were only a handful of them who were. And so they really paid craft an awful lot of lip service. And when Ray's bought Windy City, there was the expectation for all the Miller Coors houses in the entire region. I mean, all the way out to Rockford and Moline, that they would break it up and give each of those distributors a little part of it. And I convinced Ray's to keep it intact and let it compete with CBS downtown, and make them both better companies for trying that hard. And he did.
I feel like his Chicago accent got thicker during that segment. Chicago, trying that hard.
I don't remember him saying that he did that. He convinced them to do that.
Oh, I had talked to Tony after, later, days later, weeks later, months later about that. And, yeah, I think he had a lot to do with that purchase. I think he was instrumental to that, and I'm not quite sure, but I think it was something where his growth was so explosive that he needed to go somewhere else. Windy City was by far the biggest craft game in town, but
not big enough.
Mm-hmm. And rather than have Reyes buy Lagunitas, I think Tony convinced Reyes to buy all of Windy City, or helped with that, and also, and someone who probably can't talk about it would probably know is Doug Felicki, who I think was working for Reyes at the time. But I do think that a lot of it was because they had expertise, they had experience with their sales team to sell this sort of stuff, to sell craft, rather than he knew at the time the CBS people, it was just going to be a bunch of
old school
Bud Miller Coors guys,
laughing about craft beer,
and those places weren't there yet. And Reyes, what reminds me of like
the benevolent Reyes Corp.
They were scared. I remember it. There was, I think we might even talk about it in this clip later on. Like it felt like there was an arms race going on. The distributors were buying up the rights of craft breweries because they felt like
they're going to miss out.
Oh shit! Like what happens? Lagunitas is just an example of what they're all going to be like, and it's going to be crazy, and we got to get ours, and it was a really good time to, I think, work with a distributor here in Chicago because they wanted to learn. Like they were interested in learning about this craft stuff so they could sell it and kind of, play in the market and stuff like that. And very, very interesting. Since then, let's continue. They talk about the purchase of Windy City by Reyes and CBS.
And that's what got all the other distributors just beside themselves to try to get craft brands and then to build those businesses. Yeah, it was great. I mean, the kind of thing you feel good about, but didn't expect it to be that way. But I watched the tower kind of come down. When they didn't break Windy City up. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden there was space for everybody, and the space that had been otherwise denied and preserved for the big.
Well, I talked to Wes Phillips at Windy City, I think just a few days after that announcement, and the first thing I asked him was, "Okay, well, when's the Reyes truck showing up with Lagunitas?" Yeah. And he said no. He said no, and he brought over a bunch of Reyes guys as well, and they all said no, and I said, "Talk to me in 2 years."
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. No. Not going to happen.
Yeah. But at that time as well, you even saw distributors like River North starting to hustle and try to pick up brands.
Yep.
Just starting.
Everyone just started doing that. It was like
it's an arms race.
It was a frenzy.
It's an arms race now.
Works got into beer
Works as well.
Too.
Yeah. But now, just a couple years later, they are slowing down. They're just not picking up every single brewery just because they have a craft brewery.
Yeah, there's a big influx though of brands in these. They're not used to having 1,000 SKUs in their book. They're used to having 250 well managed, highly prioritized. And so it's a different world for distributors too. Just like it's a different world for you.
Absolutely.
Every tier of this industry is being changed by craft.
Yeah. Pause there for a sec. So, talk about how things were have changed and come back. Windy City does not. It might. I don't even know if it technically exists. It might exist somewhere. Like if you send an email, it's not going to bounce back. But there are no Windy City reps. There's only Reyes Holdings reps. The local one is CBS, Chicago Beverage. They sell all the Windy City and the CBS book. There is no difference. They're all just together now. So the Reyes truck is delivering all of the Windy City stuff, and it is what's happened. And they have trimmed a lot of their SKUs. They have probably dumped a lot more SKUs than they've brought on. Not probably. They certainly have.
And breweries, right?
And breweries, yes. So, they don't have 1,000 SKUs anymore. I don't know what. They have a much more well-manicured book because that's what they want. They want to be able to control this sort of stuff, which is where I think the conversation, I believe, heads to next. But, if there's one thing that I go back and think about is when breweries are bought, things do change. When somebody, when a distributor is bought, things do change. The story about, we bought them because we didn't want to change. We love what they do, so that's why we bought them. So why would we change anything? It's that's not true, and don't ever believe it when they say it. I just think it was a little bit more naive of a time, and of course they were not going to continue doing that. And, it's a little sad for me to hear that, knowing that it isn't like that anymore. I'm not saying that, CBS overall still cares, but, they won't bring in
it's
SKUs. This XBA thing.
It's like a generic book. It's just a generic book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And XBA, I was fighting for Firestone Walker XBA, which was delicious and great, and we wanted to get more, and we started getting these really old dates, and they're like, they picked it up from one of the other clusters that Tony was referring to, and I was like, luckily the brewer was here, and he said, I think on air, or maybe right before, that they're still brewing this beer for a few more months, and I was like, great, and the distributor was like, yeah, no, we're not doing any more SKUs because there was that, half-acre collab with Firestone Walker, so that's what we're going to focus on. And then after that, it's, Oktoberfest. This was in May. And it's they're still brewing this beer. I want to bring some in. And I will say, I complained to enough people that they said, there's one more shipment, so maybe I'll be able to do it if I buy layers of a pallet at a time, which is okay. But still, the no, we won't, comes a lot more easily than it used to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So things have kind of gone back to where they were. You can keep going there.
Absolutely. Yeah, even the flagship Benny's now can't carry every craft SKU. It used to just be we'll bring it in, see how it moves, and we'll either bring in one case or we'll bring in 100 cases, depending on how it moves. Now, the biggest of the big, at least in Chicago, can't have everything. Has to start to curate. And I think that's going to be, for me, it's vital.
Yeah. If you admit that the waters around you have grown, sooner or later you'll sink like a stone. Times they are changing.
Right. If you really want to get into it, what I worry about is some of the big
warrior
guys,
philosopher
taking that need for curation and leveraging that against people, saying, "Listen, you've got high throughput stores, and we can control the majority of your shelf space." And then, therefore, and again, that's why if you have people who are going for all sides of the spectrum, they're going for the wide appeal and the niche appeal, then, I mean, you know where I'm going. I'm not going to say it, but
You're going to say it. At
no,
some
I'm
point.
not. I won't.
You want me to say it?
No.
Well, somebody say it. I'm dying.
No, but then
Well,
you
you're
can
talking
have,
about.
yeah. So now you can have like Walgreens or someone like that be your one-stop shop for everything, and that scares me because now you can have the Bud House and the Miller House control that entire set and have a good enough variety. I mean, of really good beer that people now don't have to go anywhere else. I mean, obviously, it's self-interest here.
I got news for you.
Yeah.
We're the national set captain for craft at Walgreens.
Right.
So it's not Bud Miller and Coors going to make the decision.
Yeah.
It's a craft brewer.
It's
going to be in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and there and again.
Is that still true? Are they still the set captain
There's
for
no-
Walgreens?
I
Or is
would-
it-
I-
or is,
there-
Hei-
I think so.
is
Can't be
Heineken
anyway.
the set captain for Walgreens?
Or neither. Or who knows?
Right.
Yeah, who knows?
But there you are, Chris,
At
talking
the
about
end of the clip, that one? Okay, that's the end
that's
of the
you were
clip, yeah.
worrying about this, kind of like these distributors owning whatever mainstream Borg beer,
Yeah.
along with craft, and determining the entire set for most of the chains. And I'd have to say that 90% of that's what's happening.
I think so.
90 to 100%. I mean, it's the majority of stores, chains are set by the big distributors.
Yeah, but for like a year and a half, Lagunitas was doing it, so everything's fine, and we're the same as them.
Well,
so he's going to put us in the sets, right?
For Walgreens, he made his Walgreens joke, but
Right.
And it was probably the best time for that
Yeah.
sort of stuff at
Yeah.
Walgreens, too.
Right.
Like,
And also, even the independent stores, independent grocers, et cetera, have also scaled back dramatically on the number of SKUs they have,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
and
Independent and otherwise. Like,
Yeah.
And otherwise, you're right.
Yeah.
All beer.
Yeah.
and
Benny's grew, and then they've receded. That big Benny's you were talking about definitely has less beer shelves than it did, I don't know, 5 years ago.
yeah, oh yeah, absolutely it does. And that's something that I used to also talk about was, listen, these stores are going to ebb and flow with the popularity of craft, and when it's not as popular anymore, they're going to give up those shelves. I wish I could. I know I've said that on this show multiple times. And I used to be ticked off. I think what I was going on was like Walgreens had one of the biggest Bourbon County drops of the year. They were one of the big distribution
I was going to
spots.
say Goose Island.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I was saying, when this isn't hot anymore, then go to Walgreens and talk to them about it, because they're not going to care. They're just but these specialty shops, you got to throw them a bone. And I will say Goose Island in the past 4 years has gotten much better about realizing that, it seems, anyway, in my perspective. But overall, 100% what you were just saying, Ed, that is what happened.
Yeah.
Like these sets are being controlled. They have a book. They have craft. You don't need to go out. Why would you need to talk to a self-distributed?
Right,
Nobody.
They have a quote-unquote craft brand that's owned by whoever's
local.
making the set.
We have a local craft for you.
Right. Well,
Waukegan.
we have Goose Island.
Or Peoria.
Yeah, we have
Or
Goose
whatever,
Island, right?
yeah.
So or if it's someone else is setting it, we have whatever's owned by Miller these days. It's
Yeah, I
like
mean, well,
that.
this of course happened and was consolidated, during the dark pandemic years, right? The kind of big shakeout for even the independent distributors. It all kind of just aligned. It all just kind of got to this place that you predicted. You yourself actually have great predictive skills, Chris.
It's Obi. It's Obi Chris.
Obi Chris.
Yeah, Quinn Obi.
Yeah.
But it's and now look where we're at. We're now, if a tiny distributor goes under, specialty shops and people who like to drink specialty beers are potentially in a really bad place. Like when Oath went under, that Lime book goes away and Fair State goes away, and now it's like, well, somebody wants to come in, and who did, Forest and Maine come in through? Who did Fatheads come in through when we were doing that stuff? It all came in through these small independent people.
Right.
Because you think Reyes has any interest in doing something like
that. It's a hassle for them. It flies on their patoot.
Which, theoretically, just thinking about it now, is where that opportunity exists for smaller distributable people.
Right.
Well, you asked him about that in this episode, and he's just like, "There's no money there." Yeah. He says it politely, but it's like there's no money there.
I remember talking about setting up some weird co-op distro
with Tony?
Fantasy thing. No, just with a bunch of brewers. Like, why don't we just share drivers?
A distributor.
It wasn't a distributor. It was like the Uber of beer.
the Huber Uber.
That X amount of brewers would use together.
The Huber.
The Huber.
Beer.
Yeah.
In the next clip, I'm thinking maybe we'll take a quick break, freshen our drinks. But in the next clip, it's interesting. He starts talking about the zombie breweries and the consolidation and all that stuff that's kind of now has come to pass and is actively happening and was one of the first people talking about what was going to happen. Maybe he knew from personal experience. Who knows? Yeah. So we'll listen to that when we get back, and you'll have more of the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable.
And we're back. Welcome back to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable Retro Edition. We're recapping one of our best episodes. It's with myself, Mike Shalhoub from Iswas Brewing, Chris Quinn, your other co-host from the Beer Temple, and Edmar, one of the fearless leaders at Lumpen Radio and Mars Brewing.
Yeah. I think we're getting ready to talk about some consolidation and zombie breweries. I'm just looking at the notes that I have about what the clips are, and I have on like a couple of them. You'll see like in parentheses, I come from the future. The numbers are always so positive. I'm talking about, and then I have in parentheses Edmar blows Tony, and then I have in the next one Edmar blows Tony. So
Edmar is on his both knees.
Yeah. So let's listen.
You got any more of those clips?
Yeah, there's another one.
Okay, cool. Okay.
So let's listen to Tony talk about something that has happened a whole bunch in the last 9 years, and that is consolidation, and then another consolidation, and another consolidation. So one thing, before we go to a break, there's just one other thing that you had mentioned. You're talking about how essentially the wholesalers, the distribution, the second tier of the 3-tier system is essentially consolidating. It certainly is here in Chicago, and I think that's probably representative of what's going on all over the place. There's been several big consolidations in the past just 2 years here, and you've been pretty outspoken about consolidation in general, primarily on the supply side. On the brewer side, I should say. Mm-hmm. That was my joke about the sixth way, which I still don't quite understand. I'll have to talk to you, or you can tell me about it. I just don't think I'm smart enough to get it.
I'm not sure I know either.
So why is consolidation there not as worrying to you?
For distributors?
Yeah.
The funny thing is, it seems counterintuitive, but what I've noticed is that the bigger these companies get, the more objective they become. And when they're small, there's a lot more kind of personal prejudice and decision-making on a local level. And, we really like this brewery. We've been working with them for years. Our families are close. When they get big, they're kind of like, well, what should we be doing with our trucks? What should our sales guys be doing in the stores? And they look to try to find it.
He's right about that.
Radius is as big as they get. And, they saw all of this value in this unique portfolio of Windy City brands.
And now that value's gone.
That's not like that's a business decision. Well, it's not an emotional.
Like tacit in that is that he's like, and I'm going to be the thing that's most valuable in this craft segment, right? Like he doesn't say it; it's the quiet part. He's not saying out loud, but he's like that, and they will objectively need to carry my beer, right? Like that's like. Unspoken in that sentiment he's saying there.
Right, they're objective, in that craft beer is exploding. I'm seeing massive growth.
I'm going to sell them the best price,
fastest growing brand.
Yeah,
easy sell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
right.
You know, it's not an emotional. Well, I think we're going to really promote this brand because Joe's got his wife just had a kid, and off it goes.
Right. Kind of like that part of it.
So in a way,
pause it for a second. I mean, because sorry, and thank you, Serge. Because there is a lot of that I'm sure he was so tired of having to deal with distributors all over the country. So many of them are just family heirloom operations where they're like, you're basically you've been given an oil mine, and it's in your family's name, and just hold it forever, and your family will be millionaires forever.
Yeah.
Or at least for the foreseeable future, as far out as anyone can see. So that is how a lot of these distributors are.
Yeah.
And a lot of the ones that are selling to people like Reyes.
Yeah.
And it probably does suck to have to deal with those people who, are, maybe corrupt, I guess, but like, corrupt in a very classic way. Sure. I don't know. Not saying good.
You mean the fact that they have a monopoly over the distribution rights of the product in the little territories that they own.
Right, and their buddy is
or they're making
whatever.
They're making like old boys club decisions where like,
right.
Well, Johnny's Brewery, and the way he says this, we're probably inferring that it's like other. Or now in 24, it's like he's talking about other craft brands would be the thing, like he's competing with like Goose or something like that in the portfolio.
Barrel.
But what he's talking about is competing with other with macro breweries and them doing favors for people for macro beer and not selling his beer. It's not like they're not selling Lagunitas IPA to sell Jungle.
Which is why
Boogie.
he didn't want them absorbed by Reyes. He wanted Windy City as its own thing.
Right? Because they couldn't do that.
Because he wanted to be the Bud. He wanted it to be
Right.
the Lagunitas house.
Yeah. Right. That's why they were doing the sets at Walgreens, right? Where I think there was a world in 2000 and not what year was that? 2015, where that was a possibility that there would be a distribution network under the Reyes thing, where it was all these like little or smaller like offshoots of these that was run by Lagunitas, being the Bud version of craft beer, and. So he just wants that treatment. It's what really.
Well,
he wants it to be objective so he can get more beer out there. But if he were to like actually have that, the Bud of craft beer, he wouldn't want the distributors to be like, well, this thing's hotter and it's selling better. He'd want them to be like, well, Tony's birthday's coming up, so we should sell more.
Right. Yeah, who knows?
I don't know. That's conjecture.
Everybody wants to climb up the ladder, then kick it out.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
So in a way, it's like I said, it's counterintuitive, but I've noticed that it kind of yields a more level playing field.
So why does it worry you on the brewer side then?
Well, it's not consolidation that worries me. I mean, it's the goals of consolidation. So like if you read the stuff that I wrote in that blog, it's Anheuser-Busch is buying small breweries to create a large and broad Trojan horse. And they're already probing for weakness within the industry with cheap pricing of some product. Like they take Goose in other states, not Chicago, but outside here. You can buy those kegs pretty cheap, $65, $75. It's not, then there's a reason why they're doing that. They're not just trying to give away cheap beer. They're, because the money, as you said, doesn't really matter, right, Ed? I mean, people will pay for it. They're happy to. They don't even ask what it costs. They just want to have it, And so, but, they're trying to see if retailers will take the bait. And so it's this big Trojan horse. And then private equity, too, the same kind of thing. It's like a zombie apocalypse because in 3 or 5 years, 7 years, depending on the life of the funds that invested, they're gonna liquidate these holdings.
Yeah.
And it's gonna get sold to somebody. And I can imagine a horrible, worst case situation where in like 5 years, like Anheuser-Busch buys a serious stake, the private equity stake, in like 100 different breweries one weekend. As all the funds come due. That can distort things.
So
Pause it there. Yeah.
some of that was incredibly prescient, and some of it never really came to fruition. The
Well-
zombie thing really hasn't happened.
What do you mean? Ballast Point
Sure, that's
sold
one.
to a fire sale to
Yeah, but the idea that
Snakes and Kings,
there
whatever
would
they're
be
called.
one weekend, or
No,
obviously it's an
he
exaggeration,
said, and
but
I
there was
could see it.
nothing even close to that scale that we.
Well, no, but you have seen
Fire
all
Capital and
all the big
Monster Energy.
every one of the big breweries,
Yeah.
with one exception, which is Sierra Nevada, have all sold, and presumably a lot of them had private equity money that they had to pay back. Like the Horizon was due, the growth didn't happen, so they had to sell to get it. So like
Stone.
Stone, a lot of people are saying that's what happened with Dogfish Head. Now Dogfish Head, sold to Boston Beer. They didn't sell to AB.
Right.
But it happened to Brooklyn. It happened to Dale's. It happened to Highlight or Cigar City. It New Belgium several times.
The major regional players all are owned by someone else now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the one I can think of that hasn't, but probably took some sort of private money is Surly. I mean, they haven't done it, but they're one of the last. I think. I don't know how big they are, but they certainly looked like they had dreams of getting big.
I mean, we can make a prediction about Athletic. I mean,
Sure.
when is their horizon up? When is their .com money ending?
Right.
Right.
Oh yeah.
'Cause they don't make any money.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
raised a lot of money.
But yeah, and then obviously Ballast Point. I mean, it's just like ridiculous what's happened with them in modern times. And
Another good one,
yeah, and
which was huge.
yeah,
Multiple locations across the West Coast.
Yeah, but none of those sold to Budweiser the way he's talking about, right? Like the thing that's different about that is
I
that
think-
Budweiser didn't. The Trojan Horse thing, super prescient, but the fact that Budweiser would care to buy
Well,
those
but-
brands
but
is
Sapporo-
something that's changed.
But Sapporo and Bud and all the big
Kirin
brands
and-
bought most of these breweries. They bought them all.
Sure. But
But no, the magic Bud buying 100 breweries at once.
No, that
was
didn't
that?
happen.
What was that awesome fund they
they're
had?
actually getting rid of.
What
breweries.
was that fund they had? And they had a web. They bought the
ZX.
The ZX. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe
Yes.
that was their fund. They just they didn't spend enough of it.
That was their fund, and then as he was saying, they were testing waters, and they were trying a bunch of stuff with that fund,
Yeah.
and none of it.
Yeah, nothing stuck. But you know what?
Yeah.
That's what VC money wants. It's like you need one unicorn, not everything to work.
Right.
Right.
yeah. Interesting. So here, let's keep listening.
I mean, and that can distort things, you know. The truth of the matter is, it's like I think we'll be fine no matter what happens. You know, we got altitude and we got speed. You know, so
When you say we, you mean it.
I think Lagunitas, but it's like what's good for the whole industry is good for us. You know, every part of it, and so we're all kind of pulling on the rope together. And so I see it being kind of disruptive. And sometimes I hear consumers talking about how Anheuser-Busch has been really good with this brand or really good with that brand, and it's like, oh, you don't know, man. They're pulling, they're drawing you in.
Yeah. Well, you know, I say what's good for Lagunitas is good for the brewing industry.
Well, that's,
Because Tony, you know,
I want what you want. I mean, I'm like I said, 7 years ago, I was 35,000 barrels and just barely paying my mortgage.
Well, you know, Tony, I think in a previous show I said that you are like our standard bearer for how a craft brewery should operate, and that you should be our unofficial, I forgot what it was, lead commando, warlord, or hetman. Hetman was the word, right? Okay. Because,
I didn't say Shogun?
You are very honest about this. You're
was a long
telling
time
people right
ago.
now, you're telling people on the show the very basic, very
Hold on. Go
brutally
back.
honest
There's a
things
little
about
bit.
this
Yeah.
industry.
All right, go back just a few seconds. Yeah.
Tony, I think in a previous show I said that you are like our standard bearer for
again?
how a craft
Can I
brewery
call
should
you Dad?
operate, and that you should be our unofficial. I forgot what
You
it was.
say I love
lead
you too
commando,
when we get off the phone.
warlord, or hetman. Hetman was the word, right? Okay. Because you know you are very honest about this. You're telling people right now. You're telling people on the show the very basic, very brutally honest things about this industry. I don't think a lot of people want to do that. I don't think anyone really wants to know how AB InBev works or how a craft brewery works. Or it's supposed to be kind of magic, right? But it's very serious for people like us, especially people like me, a very small brewery, trying to provide at least some sort of opportunities here in our community. You guys are going to be pegging for a regional brewery thing, I think, in the next few years. It's super important to see what you've done to help us give us a kind of the ethics of how to do things right. Absolutely. And I say that because you have, I'm sure, been called every single day by AB InBev or Duvel or whoever. They're like, Tony, when are you going to sell us your brewery?
Oh, yeah, that was online. You know AB I mean? or Lagunitas had been
and you're not,
looking out.
Was that?
You're not.
Oh, yeah, it was on Brewbound. Yeah, that you had
just
been,
recently.
Yeah, looking around for investors or options or stuff like that. Yeah.
But I am looking at options, actually, and there's some shit that I'm working on that I think would be very exciting. But it's not selling the business to somebody. You know? And some of it takes a bank to work with, and so listen, bank, but I got a bank anyway, and so.
But you're not selling to the Miller Coors or Budweiser.
No, not in a million years. The Anheuser-Busch guys did come, and I told I ate his burger, I drank the beer he bought me, and then I told him I'd rather put out my eye.
Yeah, so one thing before we go,
that's the next. This is incredible.
Yeah.
So I've been misquoting that for years. I thought I was supposed to put my thumbs through my eyes. So
put out my eye.
Yeah, put out my eyes. And he did say definitively that it is not selling the brewery, right? That is, he said.
No. Yeah, he says no.
No. I'm working on something. I got
So he admitted that he was working on his deal.
He's working on something, but it's not selling the brewery.
Some big stuff, he said.
Let me defend Tony here.
Yeah.
Maybe he didn't know what the chunk was, what the percentages were at that point. Maybe he was still majority
was
owner.
Weeks away.
Yeah,
maybe he was majority owner.
No, they were in due diligence at that point, man. They were well into due diligence.
Yeah. And so that's
this
why,
was
like,
weeks
this is
away.
We got to remember, like, the optics
of a $500 million deal.
Goose Island were so bad for a while, and people were so vocally upset by it that him saying it's not selling the brewery, them giving up a 50%
Anheuser-Busch or Miller Coors,
and then giving up a 50% equity stake to a different multinational company, it allows him to be like, I didn't sell the brewery. Right?
That's right.
It was 50%. In 2 years, maybe they take another 50. Who knows? But that was like a optics. And
I don't even know if it mattered as an optics, to be quite frank. At this point, he's 23 years into doing his brewery. It's like, this is basically, how do I retire?
Right. It's also like,
how am I retiring, and how am I selling this business the best way I possibly can?
And like, we got to think now,
at the right moment when valuations were so high.
$1 billion.
We're so high.
Like, that's like an Austin Powers level, like $1 billion with your pinky.
But also remember, we are saying all of this with the benefit of hindsight.
Yeah.
Right.
And, I mean, who knows? Maybe seltzer and RTDs and stuff, didn't, take the heat off of craft beer, and it continued to be like the coolest segment of that space, So who knows? And if that were to happen, then who knows? If things had happened differently, who the heck knows? And maybe he would have kept that 50% stake in another scenario.
Hot takes. I wonder if they didn't hit numbers that they, like, the same way that those private equity, like they, if you don't hit these numbers, we take the rest of it, kind of like, if you get to keep your 50%.
If we hit the numbers, we take the rest of it.
Sure, maybe, yeah. Either one is likely or possible.
Could be.
There's also something to reiterate.
If you don't hit the numbers, why do you want all of it?
Or how about this?
Good point.
Now,
Great.
let's really
Excellent
hot take. How about we'll take on your debt for this half of it? I would hope that would, but we need to see our return. In the next 2 years, we're going to help you. We're going to make you go international. We're going to go everywhere. And we want to see this return by this level. And then, if you don't or if you do, then, we kind of close. Then we become the bank. Heineken is now the bank. And we foreclose on the other half.
You collateralize this
business.
half with the other half.
Yes.
Is a possibility.
But
maybe.
Why would they want an asset that wasn't performing? It's like,
also, the assets you get aren't even worth that much.
That's true.
Right.
Not even worth that much.
There's something to point out, like, all of the value. When you look back on these things, all of the value in these is actually in goodwill with the consumer. because they have the production space.
Yeah,
they
but
have the ability to make the liquid taste the same. They can do this. So all of the value in buying a brewery like that is the goodwill and the brand representation.
The brand, the way the brand works for them in the aisle. Oh, I see the big words IPA in a crappy font. Oh, that's Lagunitas. Give me the IPA.
Right, but that's
all people thought they made was just the IPA.
Right, but that.
And because the consumer doesn't care about 50% ownership by Heineken.
Right.
We'll never even know about it. We'll never think about it. We'll never, even if they knew about it, we'll not care.
But if we're following that logic we were talking about earlier, that like Budweiser and Miller have and Heineken to this point have failed at making a competitive product in the quote unquote craft beer space, and now they're acquiring breweries to do it. The only thing that is actually of value to them is the way that the consumer is attached to those brands.
Yeah, and that's why...
And the perceived authenticity of it. The value, like when we think about stuff, you and I, it's like, well, I spent $20,000 on that fermenter, so that still has value. They don't care.
They don't care about any of that stuff.
All that stuff is actually an albatross to them because they have the
Let's listen to the next one because Tony talks about that a little bit more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me about this Trojan horse thing that you see, this apocalyptic Trojan horse in the form of craft brewers owned by bigger brewers, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, the Trojan horse kind of imputes evil intent, But I mean, it's the same thing with, maybe you think it's evil too, but it's the same thing with like a Tea Party. The easiest way to change things is from the inside. And Anheuser-Busch has tried for years to control craft from the outside, and unsuccessfully, as it turned out. It's coming back again now. Back in the 90s, they ran this 100% share of mind thing, where they were paying their distributors, giving them extended payment terms, extra credits for painting trucks, all sorts of things, in addition to cash, in order to drop craft brands. But if bankers own the brewery, people call it ABI, Anheuser-Busch InBev, but it was called InBev before, and before that it was called AmBev, and before that it's called 3G Capital. It's a private equity fund that specializes in owning brewery. So in other words, bankers own Anheuser-Busch.
It's Goldman Sachs Weiser.
Yeah,
it makes liquid widgets.
That's right.
Yeah.
So bankers own them. So no, they want those breweries operating at peak efficiency, and that matters more than anything else.
And
so they want to destabilize craft, and if they can confuse consumers or get consumers to think it's all a mess, or that who knows who makes what beer, and does it even matter, and I don't know, what do I want to drink, and well, what does it cost? And they get people back to thinking like that. They think anyway they can push the past back into the future. And, I think the genie's out of the lamp, but that's the intention here.
I wonder how genuinely he thinks selling to Heineken is different than selling to Miller or Budweiser in this moment. Like, I can't know. It doesn't feel that different to me, but it clearly he's making a
family
difference.
still behind Heineken.
Yeah, that's a family business. Heineken?
Yeah.
Business, get out of here. It's the same private equity firm that he was talking about for Budweiser, though,
No,
right?
it's not.
Yes, it is. They own so many different beer brands.
Their money probably came from something even worse than beer.
Some sort of genocide in Africa,
in the
Holland,
1400s or something. Yeah.
What you're saying is you're going to sell to Heineken.
If you were to pick a Borg to sell out to,
sure.
Which one are you going to sell out to?
Yeah, looks like
I'm going to sell to the
Heineken's cool.
Duvel looks like
Duval's another.
I'm selling out to the Buddy system.
They're all the same. They all have the same vibes, right? They all have the same goal of maximizing profits and efficiency, anyways.
But in this moment, he might think it may have felt different.
No, we can't.
It might have been different.
No, the guy was working for 20 some odd years. Massive, explosive growth. The entire industry is exploding. Breweries are going to be in every neighborhood in Chicago, or every city everywhere, and every small town is going to have a brewery, right, as their savior. Everyone's over investing in the brewery business, and for years, the growth of craft brewing continued in these past 9 years. It continues to this day. He's just getting older. It's time to get rid of the company.
Sure.
I'd like the best deal possible with the least amount of impact on the brand, on the employees. What is the best way we could do this? Because there is a magic confluence of money and time and sine waves and curves, right?
Yeah.
What was he talking about? We're all on the same curve. We're on
We're all
different points of
points
the
on a
curve.
curve.
Points on a curve.
He is at the apex of the curve and needs to drop it now. He's dropping soon and needs to cash in right now.
Which also feels very disingenuous now because this is not a continuous curve for everyone.
Right.
He's
on different.
This is a graph that has like a thing that where there's like a little squiggly line saying that there's also a number all the way up there that technically is on this curve, but like.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is he made 2,000 barrels. He made 5,000 barrels. I remember he was telling me at one point, like, the hardest leap is from 2,000 to 5,000 barrels for a small brewery, like to make that adjustment, to understand how to scale. I mean, the guy's been in every single kind of like growth phase of a brewer could ever have, right? Mm-hmm. And his experiences with distributors, his experience with the large brands, 2 decades. Think you were 2.5 decades of doing this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh no, I'm not bemoaning him doing it. I'm just wondering, in that moment, do you think it was different to him? Heineken was different to him than Budweiser, or do you think?
He
or do you
said
think this is him
he wanted to
positioning?
put his eye out when he met with AB and Bev. He found them as major douchebags, which those corpos probably are the most probably generic douchebags on earth.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? No one will know except for the man
Tony
himself.
knows.
I considered inviting him onto the show. I maybe should have, but I didn't. I figured it would not be fruitful, especially with like a couple days notice. But I will send him. I can send him
He's
a
also
link
been
to the
kind of MIA,
show.
right?
Yeah,
I texted him and told him that we were talking about him.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. And I mean, who knows? Who knows what he thought the potential for craft was? We talk a little bit more about.
He knew what the potential for craft was.
The potential for craft was what he did. That is the apex potential.
But he did it. But he also saw the pitfalls, and he saw how large brands would try to use their Trojan horse to own part of it. He probably did. I don't know, based on these, what you're playing, whether or not.
That's very true. Like, that
I
definitely
hope that
happened.
you don't really think that he saw that the potential for craft beer is three breweries sell for $1 billion, and 2 of them have one of them resells and closes their brewery, another one is closing a brewery. Like that can't.
When you think about the points on the curve, though, you get to the end of the curve.
Maybe that's what
less
happens.
Things there. That's the nature of like distribution.
And also,
curves.
maybe that's the life cycle.
Right. Perhaps he did talk a little bit about. Oh, let's keep going. He talks about the life cycle right next. Let's go to 6.
Crazy.
Ray that I was quoting, he said the difference between AB InBev or Budweiser, I think, and Sierra Nevada is 100 years
of success.
Yeah.
Ray is right on the money.
Yeah,
Ray sees
Ray
stuff
Daniels.
most people don't, because Ray was around
brother-in-law.
the Brewers Association back in the 90s. And so it's like, if you don't kind of know where it comes from, where it goes to next is not so clear because you don't have as many points to connect, pointing out into the future,
Mm-hmm.
But Ray's right about that. I mean, and that's success. But again, you got to remember, it's about points on a curve. It's not about craft will never change. I love it the way it is. Oh God, it's changed a little bit. No, it's dying. No, it's evolving and it'll become something more interesting. So, like, I would imagine in 10 or 15 years there'll be 25 brands that make up that 90% because that number is growing.
Just real quick. And then we're talking about, I think, how
There are 11 brands that make up 90% of volume in America. Was what we were talking about.
Yes, and we'll talk about that at the end. But that's what that reference is. You keep going.
And will it naturally ebb and flow? Will it then consolidate back to
50,
10,
60,
11 again?
50, 75 years, I mean, yeah. Right now, this, it consolidated to a point where niche differentiation became possible, and then it blossomed, and now that's where we are right now.
It's a sine wave.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so eventually it'll go the other way again, and
That's what it is.
So eventually, Augie McGee the Fourth will, be just a train wreck, and you'll have to sell to Belgian interests or something like
I'm gonna have
that.
to get some.
Augie McGee the Fourth. Is that his like actual legal name? Sell to Belgian interest. You're one country away.
Right, it's true. No, obviously the corporate takeover of Budweiser, because Augie Busch was so inept that corporate raiders did a hostile takeover and took Budweiser from the family, which is a crazy story, which we should probably cover on this show.
I don't know.
The special histories.
Oh, there's books and stuff written
Yeah.
on it. Yeah. It was a hostile takeover. I mean, that's how Budweiser became foreign owned.
Yeah.
America's brewery, you know. But yeah, it's interesting. 100 years of success is the only difference between Budweiser and Sierra Nevada. And he's like, yeah, that's exactly right. And he talked about the ebb and flow of consolidation. I mean, I think he is right. I think that is just how it's going to happen. And he says, it's allowed for differentiation to blossom. And let's just go to the last clip because he kind of goes right into it. Let's do 7.
When Tony talks about being from the future and he talks about 50% of the market is craft beer, what is it in Illinois? Do we know?
There's 12, 13.
Does the Illinois Craft
13,
Brewers
14,
Guild know?
maybe.
Okay, 12 or 13. Great.
Somewhere in there. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. So the thing is, we have we can go 5 times the amount that we're at right now.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah, it's not a big deal.
Open field running. I mean, that's
It's really.
But then again, I mean, it's at 9%. 91% is this deflating bubble. So it's still a pretty damn big. Yeah. So that one, yeah, it's a pretty damn big bubble, exactly. But both of you guys, I didn't say necessarily, but the thought of craft going to 50% in Chicago,
what a dream.
seemed very much potentially doable. I think it was at 9% by dollar nationally. It's hard to say what the definition of craft is now, much harder than it used to be then.
Yeah.
But it's looking like it's at about 13.3% now.
Minus Goose, minus...
I don't know if this number counts.
Is that like a scan data number, or is that a BA number?
It's
scan data includes like Lagunitas.
right. I
still
tried
and
to get
Goose.
someone like Don to give me that info. He just didn't get back to me in time. So
I guess we're going to stop giving away Yeti coolers then.
right. I don't think it's the BA number, but
It's probably a scan number, which is
maybe a scan number. I don't know.
Not great.
I don't know. So we'll see. The other thing is like the top 10%. The top 10 breweries made up. What did he say? 90.
11 breweries made up 90% of the volume of beer consumed in America.
Right. So I actually do have the top 10 share of from 2013 to 2023. So in 2013, and this counts like Yingling, this counts Diageo and Pabst and
All
Mark
the breweries,
Anthony.
not
and,
just craft breweries, all
Right.
the breweries.
So the top 10 breweries, because remember he said that to get to 90% or something like that, you'd have to go probably to 50 breweries or 20, I forget,
25 to
25 or something. Yeah. So it was 91%. So it's good. These numbers do match up. It looks like we're talking apples to apples here. The top 10 were 91% of everything, and in 2023 it was 88%. So it changed by three percentage points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not bad.
So
I think that's just
Yeah,
how.
right.
I think that's just how. That's always going to shake out, though, right? Like the
which
biggest
is
people
what
are always
Tony
gonna have
also says
outsized-
in that episode. Yeah. He says, maybe that's just how it always has been. He
Right.
he kind of
And
says
you
that.
push back, and then he's like, "Okay."
Yeah,
And
maybe.
really, he probably was like, "I know, I'm going to say 50," and then just
Yeah, whatever.
throw him off my trail of being from the actually from the future.
Right. But the future that he was from probably was more like that, did have a wider variety, making up that 50 share by
Craft is
dollar
a 50 share,
in San Francisco.
that
And
still-
Northern Cali can't be.
Can't be.
But I'm sure it was this
Anchor probably had
moment.
a lot to do with that.
And I think just California, they were just so beer crazy, and it was just such a movement,
There's also just so much. This is now just more about America and the idea of America in general. The West Coast was so much freer and so different than as things moved west. That we have Coors out here, but Miller and Bud haven't made it quite out here yet. So
there's one analogy he uses that I didn't put in here was how he's talking about on his drive in. he sees like roadkill all the time.
That was actually
and
great.
and he talks about how when it's fresh and there's like a ton of meat on the bone, the vultures will be there and I'll see them just kind of like picking and being side by side and friendly with one another. But then as the picking gets slim and there's like less and less meat on the bone, the vultures start getting like nastier with each other. And it was an analogy to how all the brewers are so friendly with themselves, with each other now, because there's so much, as he had mentioned, open field running. But then as it, stuff starts to get tougher.
Was that about brewers? I think it was about big guys, bigger brewers.
I love it.
Okay.
I love the analogy.
I don't know that was about craft brewers.
I just love the analogy,
I just
though.
thought that he said
great.
as stuff gets tougher,
People get nasty.
people are going to start getting nasty, and it's going to happen.
I don't. Has that happened? Have you found that like people that own other craft breweries are nasty or are less open than they were in 2015? I feel like maybe I'm in a unique situation because I rely on other breweries to make beer in currently. But I found them to be just as open and just as like cool and welcoming as in all things and sharing ingredients and like all the stuff we used to do.
Well, I think that if you are maybe some brewers within a distributor's house
kind of
right
what I'm
now,
thinking, yeah.
and you're
That's
getting
exactly the
you're getting
analogy.
iced out, and this other
Gotcha.
brewery's got its relationships there in place, and they're still selling, that you would start disliking the other brewery.
For sure.
And trying to get out of that relationship and then go after those accounts and those handles and stuff like that.
Sure.
And then they take, I mean, that's happening.
I know
just
here-
fly under the radar.
I think that like here, if you take like the top couple local breweries here that so let's say so you have like Goose Island, Rev, Half Acre, and like Maplewood would probably be like a distant fourth. I know that all of them are feeling pressure and have some sort of not just benevolent relationship, even internally, not like externally necessarily, but like internally, how they think of each other. Not great. Now, does that mean like the people behind who are making the beer? No, but like,
Sure.
why is Maplewood always? Maplewood got that handle. That used to be a great account for us. Maybe that's what like Half Acre's saying, and Rev is saying that about Half Acre, and
Sure.
Goose is saying that about Rev, and then Rev is upset because they
they're
want to do a
less handle.
sponsorship, and,
Yeah.
and Goose Island just came in and
Bought it all.
barfed money all over the place, and
And there are less handles now. There are less draft handles,
Yes,
right?
true.
Restaurants don't even want draft. They want to sell cans. They don't have room for coolers. They don't
Right.
want room for draft coolers. And there's less opportunities for placing beer and selling beer, right? And there's more instances of kind of conflict where you are taking away another person's account or draft handle or placement. It's a war of placements.
Yeah, it is.
And
Not as much open field running.
We had some experiences even but it also, you do see it flare up. Like we had an experience at a recent beer festival where our neighbors were complete douchebags, purposely.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just to be rude.
I'm sorry. You had that
Normal
experience.
Edmar would just call him out and trash him. But the new Edmar knows, no, we'll sabotage them when they don't even know it's going to happen.
So
Just like the Ghost of Tsushima would do.
That's exactly.
Good.
the
You're
Ghost of
learning.
Tsushima
You're
would-
learning from your games.
Exactly.
Good. If you just go charging in, you get picked off.
You could.
You
They
can't
know,
leave-
they
you
know
can't
who
leave
did
Roy
it.
Jenkins.
They know who
Ninja.
did it.
Ninja.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like
Half
that.
ninja, half samurai.
I must play
Yeah.
this game.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It's mind blowing.
You know what? Like everything comes full circle.
it really
Here
does.
we are talking about the game again at the end of the episode.
Interesting, huh? Well, the one thing I want to say about this is that I feel terrible that I did not play Ghost of Tsushima prior to the first interview with Tony, because I would have properly called him, besides Hetman, a shogun or daimyo,
Yes.
the daimyo of craft beer.
Right.
And I feel terrible about that, but
He'll
I'm
probably
sorry,
text you
Ed.
back and
it's
say
okay.
that.
It's
Yeah.
okay. Now,
Maybe
Tony,
tell him,
you
say
are
that.
the daimyo
Say,
of craft
I
beer.
called you the hetman. I'm sorry. I meant to call him the daimyo.
Yeah, you heard Chris.
I also want to just as a recap to that, he was still maybe one of the most charismatic people I've ever been in a room with. To be perfectly honest,
Absolutely.
I can talk a little. Sorry, shit. Now, I mean, what were your intentions while you were doing this with us? But in the room, it was one of the most enjoyable, charismatic experience I've ever had. I understand why you were so taken with him, because I was too. He had a star quality to him. That wasn't because he was the Lagunitas guy. It was just genuinely a compelling person who had interesting things to say.
No, he was there.
It was really cool to record that episode.
Yeah. I mean, I interviewed him for Mash Tun Journal, and I called him the big dog of craft beer, right, in my interview.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember what we talked about, but I do remember him being one of the most genuine, wonderful, kindest people.
Yeah.
Very sweet, very generous to even give us time, right?
Yeah.
He is the hetman, the daimyo. You would never see him in the real video game.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. You don't see him anymore.
He's the unseen boss. He's the boss, right?
He's come full form. You don't see him anymore.
Yeah, I don't think we've had anybody on.
But he was he's a Chicago guy. He did so much. He brought some great events, the circus.
Yeah.
He was there. He tried. He did his best while he was there, you know?
Yeah, it was very cool.
And everyone who worked at Lagunitas moved on to something else.
Right. So many
They're
people.
all in the industry. They all got their start there.
We're going out to make a collab at Goldfinger. Tom worked at Lagunitas too. I guess they're everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing before we go, I do think that we should also talk about where Lagunitas is in the Chicago market, just directly and quite literally right now. And with their place closing and their production is now been down pretty significantly year over year. And last week we talked about it, and you weren't on the show, Ed. I'm sure you listened to it. I put the show out, I think, yesterday. I'm sure you've already listened to it, but
I did.
But in case you didn't, and for the listeners who haven't, I'll repeat. The guests were not that interested in the story of Lagunitas shutting down, and I was kind of bringing up I'm surprised that people just don't care, and that's kind of more sad that they don't care. It says something that they don't care, and I think people here locally and maybe broader, nationally, for a while saw that the light had gone out to some degree behind Lagunitas. They were edgy. They were the radical potheads to Three Floyd's scary metalheads.
Yeah.
They were just this cult of
Merry
personalities.
pranksters,
Yeah.
So much of the archetypal craft beer
California dude
feeling and vibe came from them.
Yeah.
It was the same way we talked about on the Beer Hunter episode, that so much of it came from Anchor, which was actually if you listen to the episode 7, he references Anchor all the time.
Yeah.
But so much of it also, the stoner thing, the chill, there's a couch over there that we just hang out on, that as what our ethos and casual marketing, because it's genuine thing, that came a lot from Lagunitas.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Very much the origin of a lot of people.
But also,
there's called couch brewing. That exists somewhere in America.
But what was also interesting about no one wanting to talk about it is because they also don't want to focus on another capstone in the descent of craft beer within the marketplace in general, perhaps. Maybe we're just tired of talking about failures, right? Talking about things that went bad. Obviously, people...
But this was, Ed, the biggest brewery in the state is closing, and people are like, how do you feel about it? Yeah. Anyway, what's the next topic? And it's it's interesting, It is interesting that big a thing happened, and nobody just. And I'm not saying that I was running around oh my god, but I think I want to dive in a little bit more. Not necessarily right now. We're running out of time, but why? It's interesting that it wasn't interesting to people. It shouldn't it be?
Yeah,
This was such a big, important brand, and it was a big thing locally, and in a relatively short amount of time, it now isn't.
Well, there was no emotional attachment left to it.
That's what I'm saying.
It also, like, this is a different topic, but it never really felt like it was of Chicago. It was very much a satellite thing this year. But the thing that I'm the most worried about
now is always a Heineken thing, too, by the time it opened. Right?
Sure.
Yeah.
But Chicago has always had a big brewery that churned out really high-quality brewers that, like, left for some reason, or when Goose Island has a crazy family tree of brewers that have, like, Brindleson, Seaback, like, all, like,
probably the best in the country. Yeah.
Genuinely. And Lagunitas was that for a lesser scale. People would go there, they would really get trained up on, like, what is, like,
they haven't
really
had time to grow
procedures.
and become the Brindlesons and the Seabecks yet, right?
Well, maybe, but also it might have just been a different time in craft beer too. But I mean, so many of them went. People that had worked at Lagunitas worked at Pipeworks, or I've worked with them at other places. But to not have, like, a big brewery where they don't kind of futz around with, like, the SOP is whatever. You just ask me, I'm fine. Like, it's like, this is how you do it. This is and this is proper safety. This is proper, like, cleaning regimens. It's like, to not have that as, like, a huge brewery like that in Chicago may have long-term effects on the quality of people working in production facilities in Chicago.
I don't know about that. I do know this,
You have
though.
Rev.
Maybe
We still have Rev, but
we have Rev.
people don't leave Rev.
But
Right? Like,
bump.
You know, like, people like working at Rev.
Right.
You need one that's kind of like churning.
You need a churn and burn
you
place.
need a place that where people
Burn
like
'em out.
leave a little
Corpo,
bit.
work
well,
'em hard
that's
and
you
burn
still
'em
got
out.
Goose Island.
People don't leave Goose Island. They pay really well. I was talking to someone the other day who was like, I can't leave even if I wanted to because
Yeah.
I have the best benefits and they're paying
People still
really
leave there.
well.
People still leave there.
People still leave there, but you have to really want to do something to leave there.
True.
Yeah, you have to be.
You got to like start a thing.
You got to have a vision.
Change careers.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you this much though, like just knowing that my brother who orders the beer along with Bill over at Maria's, right?
Yeah.
No one will know that Lagunitas left Chicago except for the brewing scene.
Right.
And everyone will want their Lagunitas little something or their
Do you guys still sell
IPA.
a bunch of it down there?
Yeah, they will always want it. It's just like instead of the guy who comes in every night who wants to get his Busch Light 6-pack,
Right.
or whatever,
Yeah.
Modelo 12-pack, someone wants the 6-pack of IPA.
Yeah, for sure. And like I remember a little Summit being like a foundational, a revelation.
Yeah.
This is what beer.
We can make beer like this.
Yeah. We should make something like that.
Yeah.
And
it's funny, isn't it?
yeah, and it has come full circle. There are people who are just like, I drink that. I'm not like, because we always thought craft beer was this thing where people were going to explore forever, right?
Yeah.
They're not exploring as much. They're like, they know what they like, at least style wise, or at least like what they want to buy. And he did succeed in becoming the Budweiser in that way.
For sure.
Just kidding.
For sure.
But
No, he made sure everyone knew what an IPA was.
yeah.
Well, I think we are out of time now. So thanks guys for taking this trip down memory lane. Pretty cool that this is the one episode above all others that I think of as like, oh, this is a great time capsule of that guy at that moment in time.
Yeah.
Like weeks, 2-3 weeks before it's announced that Heineken, which sets off another explosion of huge
controversy,
big dollar sales. You know,
yeah.
I mean, Ballast Point, Firestone Walker, they all come like right in the heels of this thing.
Yeah.
So it was cool, and who knows? Maybe in another 9 years
We'll be talking to Ed about how he was. You guys sold for $1 billion, and you just talked to us for about how like you can't believe Tony
I would
did
never
it.
sell our CBD THC business ever to Budweiser.
Exactly.
Never.
And they can email you
Unless they offered me X amount of money.
Yeah, and they can email you at Edmar at.
Yeah.
But,
But hey, thanks for having me. This has been great.
This was
Anything you
fun
want
to
to
hear
say
those
before
comments.
we go?
Well, I just look forward to seeing you guys in the future. Hockey's season's over.
Oh,
Let's
great.
go.
That's why I'm here tonight.
Awesome. Well, that's great to hear. Well, maybe we'll see you more here. Thanks to everyone else who's been leaving comments. Emails can go to, or electronic letters, I should say, insiders@craftbeertemple.com. We also have the actual address in the show notes. We'll see you next week. Thanks so much, guys. So long.
Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again. Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again.